It is.
Great, lovely, thank you. So yeah, as Steve said, I'm Matt Prescott. I'm a team lead at the Department for Levelling Up, and I work in the design and placemaking team. And one of my areas of responsibility is this Design Code Pathfinders program, which we're here to discuss briefly today. So what I would like to talk through for the next sort of 10, 12 minutes or so are what are design codes, the sort of design framework, so the legislative policy and guidance framework that's in place at the moment, as well as a bit of an overview of some of the NMDC testing programs, including the Design Code Pathfinders program. So to kick off with, what are design codes? So as in the National Model Design Code, a design code is a set of simple, concise, illustrated design requirements that are visual and numerical wherever possible to provide specific detailed parameters for the physical development of a site or area. So in effect, they allow for binary decision making with language like must and will. And through setting out specific parameters, they're intended to give greater clarity and certainty to users of the planning system, including applicants, local authorities, and communities about the design expectations for an area. Now, these are different from design guides. So design guides are documents providing guidance on how development can be carried out in accordance with good design practice, and will typically use language such as should and could. But I would stress here that design codes themselves can include design guidance to help direct new development. In this particular context, we're talking about LPA-led design codes. So those are design codes produced by the local authority and given appropriate weight in decision-making processes, such as through a local plan or as an SBD, for example. And also crucial just to recognize that design codes do apply at different scales, as highlighted here on the right-hand side, which is an excerpt from the National Model Design Code. So moving on to the background on design policy. So good design and placemaking has experienced elevated status in national policy and practice in recent years. So going back to the 2017 Housing White Paper, which expressed the importance of quality as well as quantity of homes. Design quality has been strengthened in the NPPF and associated national planning practice guidance, which includes the launch of the National Design Guide and the National Model Design Code. And Secretary of State James Brokenshire back in 2019 convened the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission and announced the creation of the Office for Place, which will pioneer design beauty within the planning system. So in terms of the national policy context, granting the NPPF was updated in 2021 to provide a greater emphasis on granting permission for good design and refusing it for poor quality design. There's a dedicated chapter now in the NPPF, chapter 12, which focuses on achieving well-designed places and explains how design should influence plan making and decision taking. And there are other updates in the NPPF as well that reflect the elevated status of design quality and beauty. For example, making beauty and placemaking a strategic objective of planning and setting out an expectation that LPAs will produce local design codes or design guides. So on our planning practice guidance, I mentioned the launch of the National Design Guidance, including the National Design Guide, which sets out 10 characteristics of well-designed places, and those are listed down the left-hand side. So these work together to create a place's physical character, to nurture and sustain a sense of community, and also to work positively to address environmental issues around climate. Now, in 2021, we also launched the National Model Design Code, which can help authorities to translate those 10 characteristics into local design codes. And I should say that as under the NPPF, in the absence of local design codes or guides, the National Design Guide and the National Model Design Code should be used to inform planning decisions. And then perhaps most recently, through the introduction of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023, there is now a requirement that all LPAs must prepare a design code at the spatial scale of their authority, commonly known as an authority-wide code. This is also supported by a new plan making framework, which gives greater weight to the local plan in decision making, and also introduces a new type of document called a supplementary plan, which will also have the same weight as the local plan. Now, at the moment, we're updating the National Model Design Code Part 1 to reflect the new requirement through the LUHC, and preliminary engagements took place in 2023, with more planned later this year, with the intent to then publish an updated NMDC later in 2024. So moving on now to some of the pilot and testing programs that we've been undertaking the past few years. So starting in 2021, was the NMDC pilot testing program, where we worked with 14 local authorities to test and trial the process and content of the NMDC in a variety of different contexts. From this particular program, we learned that producing a design code does take time, as I'm sure Pathfinders speaking after this can appreciate. There's also, it takes skills and resources, particularly around engagement, that naturally some places are more challenging and complex than others to code for and will require different approaches. The need to understand viability at the start of the process is also critical. And finally, that there's real value in community knowledge, and it's an asset that should be sort of taken advantage of in the preparation of codes. There's a link there to some of the lessons learned from that particular program, and I'll copy that link into the chat after this presentation. So moving on to the Design Code Pathfinder program. So in 2022, we selected 25 Pathfinders and asked them to prepare a design code in line with the National Model Design Code. So Pathfinders had free rein to choose the scale at which to code. So on the right-hand side there, you can see that there's a variety in terms of authority-wide, town centre, site-specific, and there were also 4 neighbourhood planning groups who joined the programme to code for their neighbourhood areas. And then Pathfinders also had scope to choose what they wish to code for. So some, for example, focused on streets, others on existing estates, some on new extensions, and generally there was this desire to raise quality of development across each of the development sites and areas involved. Specifically, in terms of the lessons learned from phase 2 of the programme, so 2022 to 2023, a number of Pathfinders have highlighted that the work is boosting the status of design within their authority, particularly among elected members, which is very positive. We also come to appreciate there's really no one-size-fits-all, and it is difficult to decide on the level of detail needed in the code and making sure that it's specific to the area, i.e. addresses the particular design challenges of an area. Codes can be challenging to develop in a way that doesn't stifle design, remaining flexible when needed to cover a large area, such as a whole authority's area, but also the need to carry weight and certainty. There was also challenges knowing the number of people to consult with, and there is a general expectation for continued wide and deep engagement during code production. A general challenge as well was ensuring that the code doesn't become too big and remain sort of functional, focused, and usable with the end users in mind. And finally, just recognizing that in most authorities, there's sort of a lack of time and resource available to produce these codes. And this isn't just with respect to design, but other necessary fields, which often led to the need for bringing in sort of consultants for certain specialisms. In terms of lessons learned with respect to development management, I thought I'd just highlight a few here. So DM officers were key to establishing the focus and content of codes, identifying the appropriate scope, and zeroing in on common application problems experienced by development management teams. So for this reason, it's desirable to have multidisciplinary in-house teams, including representation, ideally from someone in development management or someone who has DM experience. And this can help you understand DM processes and align priorities to inform code development and implementation. Testing is critical to help further refine and optimize usability, noting that DM teams are a key user group here. Also, that testing could involve the use of compliance tools and checklists though it's important to understand what works best for your DM colleagues in particular. And finally, training is also essential, but not only to familiarize DM teams with the code's content, but also to understand how it fits into the decision-making process. So as part of the sort of what we call phase 2, so from 2022 through to 2023, we work with the Design Council to prepare a range of learning materials, and these are listed here. Again, I'll share this link in the chat afterwards if you're interested in reviewing these. And I think to conclude, I just wanted to say that we're currently on phase 3 of the programme. So we're continuing to work with Pathfinders, drawing on the lessons learned during phase 2. At this phase, there is a greater focus on implementation, including the role of testing and training, how Pathfinders are approaching this, and ultimately what's working well as they progress through to implementation. As part of this work, we will be preparing additional learning materials with the help of the Design Council, and we expect these to look at engagements with DM teams and wider council teams, with the aim of ultimately preparing some materials which can help facilitate effective implementation of design codes. And I think with that, I will hand back over to Steve.
Thanks, Matt. That's